Welcome and thank you for attending the State Board of Chiropractic Examiners stakeholder meeting via webinar. The date is May 19th, 2023, and the time is 9:31 a.m. Before we get started, we would like to introduce the staff members from the Division of Professions and Occupations that are present. My name is Darcy Magnuson, and I'm a regulatory analyst with the division. Also attending is Yukon Morford, Program Director. As many of you have been to DORA stakeholder meetings before, we would like to reiterate the importance of your comments today. DORA makes decisions every day that may affect your life and your business, so your input is vital in the rulemaking process. Throughout this process, our goal is to create regulations that clarify and explain legislation, ensure minimum competency to enter and continue to practice, and provide only what is absolutely necessary for consumer protection without creating unnecessary barriers to the marketplace. Your input will be part of the information that goes to the board as it considers adopting revisions to the rules. More specifically, today we will be discussing multiple proposed changes to the State Board of Chiropractic Examiners rules pursuant to the rule review, which is mandated by Section 24.4.103.3 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. The purpose of the rule review is to assess the continuing need, appropriateness, and cost-effectiveness of the rules to determine if they should be continued in their current form, modified, or repealed. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the board's website by the close of business on Monday. As this stakeholder meeting is held solely by webinar, please raise your hand using the hand icon if you would like to speak, and we will unmute your line so you'll be heard by everyone. Or you can type your comment in the questions section and we will read it out loud. Before we start taking comments, we ask that anyone providing comments please state your name and the name of the organization that you represent, if any. Feel free to provide either general comments on the rule changes or specific comments on the proposed language. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 to 5 minutes and try not to repeat something that was already said. You're welcome to let us know if you are in agreement with someone else, and that will be noted. If you are using the audio through your computer, please remember to put any phones on vibrate or turn them off. And whether you are using computer or phone audio, try to keep background noises to a minimum when speaking. So what I think would be best is to start at the beginning and go through the comments on the side and call for feedback as we walk through the rules so that we can keep all of the comments together if possible. And if we need to bounce back and forth, we can. Let me pull. Before we do that, I see Carrie Hershey, your hand is raised. We can start with you and then walk through the rules too. So, oh, you lowered your hand. Okay. Let's start at the top, and then if there's something that someone wants to talk about, we will just work through the rules that way. So the first part here, for those of you that were not at the last stakeholder meeting, the proposed new rules 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 are to comply with the Secretary of State styling manual, also to make the rules consistent with the board and program rules across the division, sets forth the statutory authority, scope and purpose, and applicability at the beginning of the rules. So pretty standard. Feel free to correct anything that you see that might be wrong, like if it's the Chiropractic Practice Act, or to jump in on anything there. And the side of the rules, I won't go through these, but I did include the statute so that people can see them. Those will be removed, of course, when they ultimately get filed with the Secretary of State. It's just for ease of access and reference as you're looking at the rules to also be able to look at the statute. So that's why that's there. Let me see if I want to miss anything else here. Okay. So the board has taken a look at these rules and made some proposed changes. So what you'll see in the highlighting on the side and where we're asking for stakeholder feedback is whether those changes should be made or not, because from here, what we'll do is we'll take this stakeholder feedback back to the board next week at its meeting and then back to stakeholders. And then the rulemaking is tentatively scheduled for July 27th, and we'll go over those dates again at the end. So if stakeholders have feedback regarding the board's proposed changes, we are asking for that now, so the board can hear that feedback at its next meeting. So I'm watching to see hands. The other thing is these rules are also posted on the board's website under the public notices tab. That's where you can find everything related to rulemaking, and also includes the stakeholder comments. They are current based on all of the comments that we have received, and that link is active. So as I receive comments, I notify the commenter, and then I post the comment online. So you can check back to see comments as they're received. So unless I see hands, I'll just keep going through this and flagging the proposed changes by the board. These are just statutes. And part of the rule review is to make sure that the rules don't duplicate the statute. So that's why the recommendation here, if the rule was just copied and pasted directly from the statute, the recommendation is to remove. Here's another proposed change by the board. Make sure folks see that. Here is a stakeholder comment that we received on the 14th. So I want to make sure other stakeholders can see that as well. And again, the comment in its entirety is posted on the board's website if you want to look at it. All right, Gary Hershey, I have unmuted you. We should be able to hear you when you unmute.
Thank you. I just had a question about this. The combining of the use of the term electrotherapy / physiotherapy certification, I think, could be confusing. All doctors of chiropractic practice physical therapy as part of their scope of practice, and physiotherapy and physical therapy are the same thing. Electrotherapy is different and is the subject of the additional training. And so I just didn't know if it might make sense to separate out physiotherapy from that 120-hour licensing certification.
And do you think it would need to be its own rule, or just remove it entirely from?
Well, I think it's important to keep physiotherapy somewhere in the rules, and it may just go up into scope of practice. And that is because periodically over time, there's a complaint from a physical therapist saying that a chiropractor has advertised physiotherapy or physical therapy, and that is within their scope of practice. It's just that I understand the certification to be an electrotherapy certification.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. We did take a look at the statute, and I don't know that it's in the statute that physiotherapy is in the definition of chiropractic. So that might be something to look at too.
Well, it's manual therapies. So, I mean, if you look at I think you need to keep physiotherapy in the rule.
Okay.
But chiropractors do the same things that physical therapists do.
Okay.
It's manual therapies. So, exercise therapy, work hardening, strength training, trigger points, all those are all the same things. It's just called physiotherapy and chiropractic and physical therapy and physical therapy.
Okay. And what I might ask, and this is to all stakeholders, but I appreciate your comments today. And if you have suggestions on where you think it would make sense in the rules, if you want to submit those in writing, that's always helpful for me, and I know also for the board as well. So,
and Darcy, I think I'm sorry, again, this is Carrie Hershey. I'm appearing here today on behalf of the Colorado Chiropractic Association. We do intend to send a follow-up in writing. We just thought it would be helpful to have the discussion first. And so then we'll send our comments in writing after the meeting.
perfect. Okay, that's great. Awesome. Anyone else with comments? I'm going to go ahead, Carrie, and remove, just so I can keep track, lower your hand if you want to provide any other comments, and just raise your hand again. Oh, I think maybe that was. Did you want to say anything else? I unmuted you about this. Okay, I think we're good. Alrighty. Anyone else want to address this? Okay. All right, Carrie, you're unmuted if you want to say anything else.
I don't. I think I'm just messing up with how my hand goes.
I think we're probably lowering and raising at the same time.
Okay.
So, no problem. We have a written comment from Greg Crawford. There has apparently been some confusion when the exam needed is simply one recognized by the board. This is a proposed change in acupuncture. It should be included in electrotherapy and chiropractic. Okay. And please correct me if I am wrong. I don't know if that would go under this, but I'm going to add your comment here regarding the examination, just so that we have it. All right. We will move on. So that was the next comment about the examination by an organization recognized by the board instead of nationally recognized examination. I want to make sure that people see that. Proposed addition of supervised clinical component. Okay. Here are some proposed changes in scope of practice and written comments that we received last night from the Colorado Medical Society in collaboration with some other organizations. Again, the full comments are posted on the board's website. If you want to review them, I added in the relevant portion for this rule and then throughout. So if any stakeholders want to weigh in on that. All right, not seeing anyone. Another proposed board change, an institution whose accreditation is recognized by the United States Department of Education. This is regarding hypnosis. Nope, I didn't want to miss Suzanne's comments here either. So comments received on May 12th. Okay. This is related to subsections 3 and 6. Comments received last night, again from the Colorado Medical Society in collaboration with other professional bodies. Okay, Carrie Hershey. We should be able to hear you.
Yes, thank you. I'm just seeing these comments now for the first time, and the CCA supports deleting the parentheticals because our understanding is the parentheticals are simply examples of orthopedic testing. And oftentimes, if you do a list like that in parentheticals, it suggests that those are the only things that go into orthopedic testing. As any doctor on the line knows, there are multiple things that go into orthopedic testing. So I think that's why that suggestion was made in the first place, to delete those. So we support the board's change in this regard in terms of deleting the parentheticals.
Great. Thank you. Proposed revisions regarding CEs. Carrie, I've left you can mute and unmute. That way we don't have to deal with the hand raising. So feel free to jump in at any point and weigh in. Okay, some more proposed revisions from the board. And this is related to CEs. And then we've received written comments last night, again from the Colorado Medical Society, which are included here, about the use of credentials.
And this is Carrie Hershey again. We would again support the board's changes in striking this section, Rule 11. It creates tremendous confusion. The statute, the Chiropractic Practice Act, already defines the titles that a doctor of chiropractic can use. So those titles are already outlined. There's not a need to have a rule unless you're trying to clarify something in the statute. And what appears to be happening with the language is that it creates more confusion as opposed to just simply relying on the statutory language. I also have comments about Rule 12, so I don't know if you want me to just jump in on that one as well.
Sure. I know that, yeah, sure, that's fine. And we can go back if someone else wants to address this, since we have written comments on that. Yes, go ahead and go into your comments on Rule 12.
Sure. We are proposing that the prohibition on advertising the cost of x-rays at 12B6 be stricken. And we're also proposing 12B5 be stricken as covered under 12B7. So 12B7 could read advertising that is misleading, deceptive, or false, and that would cover the language. The specific reason for removing 12B6 related to the cost of x-rays is that now conflicts with price transparency rules. If, for example, if a dental provider is doing a new patient evaluation, they are required to advertise the full price, including any x-rays or things that they may be doing, yet the chiropractic board prohibits the full price from being discussed. And price transparency rules require that if you're going to offer a discounted service, you have to tell the patient in advance what it is. So I'm not sure, frankly, that provision has been in the rules for as long as I've been practicing. I'm not sure where it came from or why it's there, but it appears to be outdated with the new price transparency rules.
Okay. Thank you for that. And that's exactly what one of the things we're trying to accomplish with the rule review, right? Is to make sure to update the rules. That's enjoy doing rule review for this reason. Okay, perfect. So if my comments, I know you're going to submit written comments too, so I can always take these out, but just so that they're in there for now, and you can let me know if I was typing any of that wrong.
No, I think that I'll send something in writing, but I think that's the gist of it.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh, this is Carrie again. I have comments on 13.
Okay.
That looks like where we are.
Yes.
I actually have some pretty substantial comments on the entire section, and in particular the new section D that's been added that's on the screen. The CCA believes that this entire rule now contains overlapping, conflicting, and unnecessary provisions in light of the new transparency and pricing laws. As many on the call are aware, in 2017, Colorado enacted the Transparency in Healthcare Prices Act. That requires all healthcare providers to make public pricing for their most 15 common healthcare services. In 2018, the out-of-network healthcare services to covered persons legislation was passed requiring disclosures for out-of-network services. And then at the federal level in 2021, the No Surprises Act passed, and it became effective in 2022. In short, all those laws seek to ensure that patients are, excuse me, are informed about healthcare costs in advance. And they have a host of requirements that healthcare providers are all required to comply with. In particular, if you look at the language of 13A2, it's internally inconsistent. It talks about requiring a signed written prepaid treatment contract in advance of a discounted service, yet somebody may discount an initial evaluation and not have proposed a treatment plan yet because they haven't evaluated the person. So that section 2 there seems to be internally inconsistent and conflating a discounted service with a prepaid treatment plan. It does not, frankly, make sense to have a requirement for a signed written prepaid treatment contract in advance of the performance of an evaluation, and later in the rule it actually says that's prohibited. So the language is internally inconsistent. In my experience in representing doctors is that this causes tremendous confusion because that section then conflicts with section 13D6. But in particular, the new language at 13D appears to the CCA to not only be ambiguous and conflicting, but it's overreaching. It seems to suggest that a discounted service can't be provided as part of a package, a prepaid plan, or if a patient elects to make payments over time that don't directly coincide with treatment. This doesn't make sense given the operations of many healthcare service providers. For example, direct primary care physicians offer prepay or monthly payment plans for a year of service. Dental offices offer routine prophylactic service plans. Massage and physical therapy providers routinely offer package plans and prepay discounts. Hence, Rule 13, in our view, imposes disparate regulations on doctors of chiropractic that infringe on the free market and impede their ability to compete in a marketplace that they believe requires healthcare choice. So we think that those provisions, we believe that they should be stricken altogether because of the Transparency Act. But to the extent that the board believes Rule 13 is still necessary, we are going to submit some proposed language that simplifies the rules in a way that does not conflict with the other language that we've spoken about here, and is simple and easy for doctors to understand so that they can achieve compliance.
Great, thank you. I did my best to summarize, but and made sure to note that you'll submit those in written comments.
Yeah, that was a lot. I apologize for that, but I will make sure to get it to you in writing.
Oh, I think it's helpful because we want to make sure that the information is received by the board and other stakeholders, and since this is recorded and people can listen to it after the fact if they weren't able to attend, I think that that's helpful to have the whole picture.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Another proposed change by the board here. This is a proposed addition that we did receive stakeholder comments about.
Oh, yeah, Darcy, this
Yes.
is Carrie Darcy. We have two comments on Rule 15.
Okay.
The first one has to do with the first change right there at 15BA. We're very concerned, the CCA is very concerned with the additional language because it interjects confusion and ambiguity for licensees. The purpose of rulemaking is for the board to provide clarity and notice to licensees about the conduct that will or won't put them in violation of the rules. This language does nothing to provide clarity. In fact, it interjects ambiguity. Certainly, all doctors can determine if they're relying on a peer-reviewed professional or scientific journal. The fact that the board is then reserving the right to, after the fact, say, well, we don't like the journal you relied on, does not give adequate notice to doctors about what they can and can't rely on in terms of a peer-reviewed journal. And I don't believe that the board has the authority to make that kind of rule and decide after the fact whether it disagrees with peer-reviewed literature. And so we believe that the language as proposed is impermissibly vague, and we would object to its inclusion. The second comment we had with respect to Rule 15 is at Rule 15E. And if you go down, to the new section, this is probably the most concerning section for the CCA with respect to this rule. It wholesale incorporates what is essentially a moving target based on guidelines of third-party payers. Simply put, it's an unworkable rule, and non-compliance is essentially guaranteed. The proposal puts individual doctors in a position of having to navigate potentially thousands of ever-evolving insurance products and contracts between a patient and their insurer. There is no requirement that a doctor be involved in the insurance relationship, and the doctors that I have met would like nothing more than to be extricated from those relationships. Aside from the fact that the board does not have any statutory authority to enforce third-party payer rules, it's unclear what the board is trying to accomplish with this rule. It simply makes the informed consent that it is talking about uncertain. Nowhere in informed consent law has there ever been any tie to an insurance company requirement. Informed consent law in Colorado is based on the reasonable risks and benefits a provider has or considers and a patient considers with respect to any given procedure. What an insurance company will pay for has nothing to do with informed consent. And this simply puts the insurance companies in a greater position of authority with doctors in what's already a David and Goliath type situation. This language has no place in an informed consent conversation between a doctor and a chiropractor. Thank you.
All righty. And I know, Carrie, that you had those comments in advance, but I wanted you to make sure you saw the written comments we received last night too. Again, those are posted on the board's website because I think some of the concerns may have been shared. And then Greg Crawford said insurance carriers can arbitrarily declare a procedure experimental and there is no rebuttal. And
Yeah.
put your comment in, so it's included.
So it feels like everybody's on the same page. One of the times that the Medical Society and the Chiropractic Society can be in agreement.
Okay. All right, acupuncture. And I think, Greg Crawford, that I may have misplaced your comments from earlier about acupuncture. If I did, let me know and I can add them into the right spot. Or I could have added them correctly in electrotherapy. I'm just rereading them. All right.
This is Carrie again.
Yes.
We would just note that Rule 22, it's the CCA's position that the rule should be overhauled. The rule is unnecessarily detailed with respect to documentation in a environment where documentation is changing with the advent of electronic record keeping. The record keeping rule for chiropractors is different and more cumbersome than any rule for any other regulated health profession in Colorado. The rule continues to be neuromuscular specific and does not account for functional or wellness or nutritional care. It contains redundant and unnecessary references, which I can send samples of in writing. And so we would just request revisiting of that rule. The only other thing I have is a general comment regarding clarification. I don't know where you want to put this, but this relates to the recognition of accredited schools. The Practice Act at 12-215-106 talks about an applicant having evidence of graduating from a chiropractic school or college that has status with the Commission on Accreditation of the Council on Chiropractic Education or its successor, or from a chiropractic school or college that meets equivalent standards. The rules, however, at various places like Rule 15b1 and Rule 34b, they only reference the CCE alone. So although there's no other current comparable accrediting agency, the statute does contemplate other processes, and so we don't think CCE should specifically be referenced. And those were all of our comments for today.
Okay, I will wait until I get your written comments on that to plug those in where you think changes should be made. And then I can drop them in after.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Yep, thank you.
All right, let me scroll back. So I believe we were on 1.22 regarding record keeping. Okay. I want to make sure we don't miss anything. The emergency rules expired on May 9th, so I need to pull those out. Just going to make a note to myself. And then that will require some renumbering. I have a feeling we're going to be doing some renumbering again. Okay, and that takes us to the appendices and takes us to the end. So,
Darcy, this is Carrie Hershey again. The appendices, as I understand it, are standard across all of the healthcare professions. Is that correct?
that is correct. So the sexual disclosure misconduct statement is the same across all, except for there might be like the statutes would be changed, right? If I'm trying to see if there's anything in here specifically to Chiro. But yes, the language is the same.
Okay, so we did not suggest comments there here because we understand that this is probably not the forum to do that in because it would have to be changed at a different process. Is that right?
You can certainly suggest those changes. I imagine you're talking about surprise billing, would be my guess.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, and this is, you can suggest them here, and we would have to make each change. Let me say this again. We would have to make the changes across all, not we, each board and program would consider the changes, right? So there's really no, because we're not going to have another joint stakeholder meeting, right, for that since the legislation has already been implemented. But if you have concerns, raise them here. The board can consider it. And then, of course, we would want the consistency. So we would take it to other boards as well if the board decided to make any changes.
Right. And that was my question because there's some things that don't make sense in the context of chiropractic. But to the extent that the decision has been made that the appendix will be used across all boards, the changes probably wouldn't be helpful because they would be specific to chiropractic.
All right, I hear you. Yeah, that, and what we used was, and I think we have had this conversation potentially, but the federal
Yeah.
sample forms. So that's why we're trying to keep them consistent across.
Yeah, and we understand that, and we understand that to the extent we have specific chiropractic language that supplements the form, we can simply add to it.
Perfect. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Let me just, I'm going to add Greg Crawford's other comment in before I lose it at the top, and then we'll talk about, I kind of already went over next steps, but I will go through those dates again. Alrighty. So this version of the rules that you're seeing on the screen, right after I end this call, I will post them on the website. So you have the most updated version. If any changes are made, we continue to update. This will be the version that the board looks at on Thursday. So, and also would be a good starting place if anyone else wants to provide additional written comments. And like I said, the written comments we have received so far are updated online. That link is live. I can update them as we receive them. So check back periodically if you can. If you have time, we don't send out like a push notice unless we're noticing a meeting or noticing a hearing. And then it's just, like I said, it's the same link. So if you keep that saved somewhere, you can just use that to check for comments. As far as next steps are concerned, we want to thank you for participating in today's meeting. As part of this collaborative process, like I mentioned, all comments and program recommendations will be provided to the board for review during the board meeting on May 25th. Then any additional rule revisions from the board will be presented to stakeholders at the next stakeholder meeting. I don't believe we have that scheduled yet, but we will likely, and I'll check in with UConn, be having that either in June or early July. And then the board will deliberate on the final version of rules at the permanent rulemaking hearing, which is tentatively scheduled for July 27th. That concludes our stakeholder meeting for today, and we thank you for being here and for providing your feedback.
Darcy, this is
Yes.
Carrie. If I can just ask, is it okay to get comments in on Monday?
Yes, that's fine. I will, UConn can let the board members know. Once I receive them, I'll update that link and then we can let the board members know.
Okay, and I can copy UConn as well, just so you guys have them quickly. But one of our board president is traveling today, and so I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to sign off on these today.
That's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Have a nice weekend.